They're joking about not wanting peace while talking about war. Listen closely, because this moment says more than they think.
Pete, do you want to give about a 3-minute statement on how we're doing in this, as I call it, military operation? People don't like me using the word war, so I won't. But the Democrats go to war. How about a little statement? I think he's done a very good job. Do we agree he's done a good job, Mark White? Can we take some of your time?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. You're spot on. Never in history has a modern military, Iran had a modern military, a modern navy, a modern air force, modern air defenses, leadership, massive bunker. Never has a modern military been so rapidly and historically obliterated, defeated, from day one with overwhelming firepower. The air campaign that we've conducted, that Israel's conducted alongside us, was one for the history books, truly. And it's because we have a president of the United States that when he sends his warfighters out to fight, he unties their hands to actually go out and close with and destroy the enemy as viciously as possible from moment one. And that's why we see ourselves as part of this negotiation as well. We negotiate with bombs. You have a choice as we loiter over the top of Tehran, as the president talked about your future. The president has made it clear that you will not have a nuclear weapon. The War Department agrees. Our job is to ensure that. And so we're keeping our hand on that throttle as long as hard as is necessary to ensure the interests of the United States of America are achieved on that battlefield. This is not Iraq and Afghanistan. This is not a president who's interested in vague end states. He's been very clear with us about what we need to accomplish, creating the conditions for them never to have a nuclear capability, and that's exactly what we're doing in historic fashion. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Great job. You know, the only two people that were quite disappointed, I don't want to say this, but I have to. I said, Pete and General Raisin Kane, I think this thing's going to be settled very soon. Here they go. Oh, that's too bad. Pete didn't want it to be settled. It's these guys are doing a great job. That's a good attitude, though, Tom, right? They were not interested in settlement. They were interested in just winning this thing.
There are moments in politics where it's not just what's said, it's how it's said. And this right here is one of those moments. You've got Donald Trump standing there, framing what's happening as not quite a war, because even the word war has weight, but still clearly describing a full-scale military operation. And then comes the praise. Total destruction, overwhelming force, a modern military obliterated. Not weakened, not degraded, completely wiped out. That's the narrative being presented about Iran. Now, step back for a second, because when leaders start describing military action in absolute terms, never in history, completely destroyed, historic victory, that's not just analysis, that's messaging. It's meant to project strength, control, dominance. But here's where it gets uncomfortable, because in the middle of all this, there's a moment that slips through, almost casually. A suggestion that some officials were disappointed at the idea of things ending quickly. Think about that. Disappointed that a conflict might be resolved sooner rather than later. Even if it's said jokingly, even if it's brushed off as banter, it reveals something deeper about mindset. Because leadership in moments like this isn't just about winning, it's about responsibility. It's about understanding that every military decision carries consequences, not just strategically, but humanly. And when the tone starts to shift toward enthusiasm for destruction rather than urgency for resolution, that's when people start asking hard questions. Then there's another line that stands out. We negotiate with bombs. That's not subtle. That's a philosophy. And historically, that approach has always come with risks, because while force can achieve objectives in the short term, it also shapes long-term consequences, regional stability, global perception, and the potential for escalation. This isn't happening in isolation. It involves alliances, like coordination with partners, such as Israel. It involves global reactions. It involves how other powers interpret what they're seeing. And when you combine that with messaging that emphasizes total domination, it raises a bigger question. Is the goal stability or spectacle? Because there's a difference. Stability requires strategy, restraint, and clarity.